站他边上。
Yeah, you too. You too. Come on,
Yeah,
baby.
yeah. Don't be shy. Unless you're in the witness program.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tom Fuentes, and I'm a retired FBI agent, 30 years in the FBI, 6 years as a street cop outside of Chicago before that. I have to say that what's happened in the last 6 years to my beloved FBI is a travesty, and I'm very ashamed of what's been going on. And for the FBI to call January 6th the largest and most important investigation in the history of the Bureau is just horrible in my mind.
Amen.
I retired. The FBI, when you're an agent, you must retire when you turn 57 years old. So for me, that was 15 years ago, I was forced to retire. And back in those days, everything was different than what I see now. For example, when I saw the release of the messages between Peter Strzok and his girlfriend, who was a lawyer working for McCabe in the front office, it was just, I just could not believe it. In my 30 years, all of the people that worked under me, next to me, or over me, I could never have told you who they voted for, what their politics was, what party they were in. That was taboo.
That's
Whoa.
right.
We did not discuss that.
Amen.
And then I was an agent in Chicago in the 1980s, and we frequently, as you know, in Chicago, the voting records there go back decades, being just terrible. And, you know, the saying there was always vote early, vote often. And
Chicago.
in the 80s, 80% of our office, which was about 400 agents, were assigned to work at voting places in the Chicago and Cook County area to try to prevent voter fraud. After 2016, 2020, later, 2020 specifically, hearing the Attorney General Barr not even want to investigate allegations of it,
Amen.
I could not believe that.
Right.
And I thought, here was somebody that most of us in the Bureau had believed to be a true patriot, a true conservative, and honor the rule of law. And to have what appears to me of completely ignoring the rule of law, and this is going back now 6 years, going back to just seemingly around the time Donald Trump gets elected president, actually when he's running for president. So we've been through the Russia hoax, we've been through the attempt by Strzok and his girlfriend and others to derail the Trump candidacy, and then claim to have an insurance policy that they were going to take him out, and they couldn't have tried any harder and still are. 2 impeachments, how many investigations, how many prosecutions, more going on now, and what have they gotten out of any of them?
Zero.
Nothing.
Zero.
Nothing. And I've heard, you know, my wife and I, Ning over here, in 2016 we went to 2 Trump rallies, and and also 2 Pence rallies back before he went off the rails.
Right.
And those rallies were fantastic.
Big wire. Big wire. Push the button up. Push the button up.
Live
thought it was-
TV. Live TV.
I thought it was the deep state.
Exactly.
Silence that guy. Take that microphone away.
Right? Get rid of him.
So anyway, to see what's been going on, again, starting 2015 when Trump announced his candidacy, it seemed that about that time, the FBI, many senior officials in the FBI went into high gear to try to derail his candidacy then, his presidency afterward. And you remember at the time when Trump, candidate Trump, later President Trump, said, they're spying on me. Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. It's a lie. He's a liar, blah, blah, blah. Well, he happened to get that information from another true patriot. Admiral Mike Rogers, who was running NSA at the time, learned that they were conducting illegal wiretaps, and he went to Donald Trump and said, hey, they have wired up your Trump Tower here, stop conducting business because it's all being recorded against you.
Wow.
And that's when Trump moved his campaign headquarters to Pennsylvania, to one of his clubs, and had that being continuously swept for microphones and bugs and everything else. So here's someone, a true patriot, who doesn't get much credit. He did get fired later, but not by Trump, of course. But anyway, that's where he learned, and so he's saying what he knew to be a fact based on one of the senior-most officials in the intelligence community telling him it was a fact. I'll tell you another thing, that fortunately in my career I reached a very high executive position. I ran a field division, I ran a headquarters division, international operations, and became very familiar and was taught, because earlier in my career I worked organized crime and criminal matters. Later in my career as an executive, I had to learn more about counter-espionage, intelligence investigations, and I learned just enough that when you had 2 years ago Brennan, Clapper, and the other 50 liars claim that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, there was no part of that was Russian disinformation. It had nothing to do with Russia.
Right.
What was coming out was just information. The stuff that came out about Hillary Clinton earlier during her campaign, that wasn't disinformation either, information.
That's right.
So what had been coming out, they've done their best to suppress the truth. And in 2020, when Trump was trying to be reelected in October, when they suppressed the nation's oldest newspaper, the New York Post, when they had their buddies at Twitter, and actually maybe not buddies, their employees at Twitter and Facebook and the other social media start knocking people off. At that time, not just Trump, Kayleigh McEnany and others that were in the administration were forbidden. The newspaper, the Post, Miranda Devine, the lead reporter in that case, all of them were silenced by social media until after the election, and then it's like, oh well, that's the way it goes. Trump lost. And any claim that to the contrary, again, conspiracy theory, and investigate the people that claim that the election was fraudulent.
Amen.
Now, how many here saw the movie 2,000 Mules by Dinesh D'Souza?
Yes, we did.
And how many mainstream media pundits, analysts, contributors came out and said, that's a conspiracy theory, they don't have that technology. Let me tell you something, I used that same technology as a senior official in the FBI back in 2002, when I was the boss of the FBI in Indiana. We had a woman there who was kidnapped, and the two guys that kidnapped her drove from central Indiana to West Virginia. She still had her cell phone. Her cell phone was on. It was pinging off the towers along the way. As a result, the FBI was able to track her and her kidnappers into the mountains of West Virginia and rescue her.
Yeah.
The technology in 2002 was good enough to take your phone or my phone and tell the authorities within 6 feet where you are on the earth, by longitude, latitude, altitude, all the way around. So this woman is in the middle of the woods in West Virginia, and we rescued her. And I remember after the fact in that case being interviewed at that time by Matt Lauer on the morning NBC TV show about that. And I said, we use this technology all the time in cases like that. It could be missing persons. It could be an elderly person with Alzheimer's who wanders off. Where did they go? We've got to find them before they get hurt and use the technology to track that down. So right now, every one of us here with our cell phone on, the phone company knows exactly where each of us is. That technology,
Hashtag Freedom Corner.
the technology was used, and Dinesh D'Souza points it out in that movie. Very valid, and you have everybody saying, oh no, that can't be. Oh no, that technology is no good. Oh no. Well, that's the 950 people who have been arrested for January 6th, how they got tracked down.
Right.
Amen.
Same technology.
Yes, sir.
Same technology, even if they didn't go in the Capitol. We have people that were outside using their rights to assemble and protest, and they still got tracked down, and many still got arrested, and many are probably still over here in this facility.
Many others around the United States.
Now the thing is, you know, we have pledged allegiance just a few minutes ago again to our country, to our Constitution, to our way of life. And to see our government completely violate that. Where is the speedy trial for this? And we have been watching, any of you that have a television, radio, internet, you name it, you've been watching over the last couple of years, people get thrown off of subway station platforms onto the tracks and killed. People shot down, stabbed, beaten with baseball bats, and the people that did that to them, how long are they held in custody?
48 hours.
Maybe, that's some 48 hours, usually less. So we have murderers or attempted murderers who get nothing, and they're back on the street.
Right.
And we have even the people here that admittedly trespassed into the Capitol, 2 years later,
Right.
still in jail, still not given fair trials or fair representation or even treatment in a good facility.
That's right.
Right.
So this is unbelievable. And I never thought in all my years, 36 years as a sworn law enforcement officer and then another 10 consulting back to the FBI after I retired, I have never, ever imagined that our government, that our law enforcement agencies could be so corrupted and become so evil. So
Wake
this,
up.
God bless you for coming out here night after night. Tonight it's a beautiful night.
Yeah.
So what about the
Thank
nights
you.
when it was 10 above zero and windy and terrible and freezing? You're out here night after night. You're right. The guys behind us are still here. So God bless all of you. Thank you for coming out again.
Thank you, Tom.
Question.
People want to know if they turn location off, can they still get pinged?
If you have phone service, then you're being pinged because what happens is, little geometry and trigonometry, is that there's cell towers all around here. They're not that far apart. Your phone signal comes out of your phone and it hits this tower 1/50,000th of a second, and it hits that tower 1/60,000th of a second, and it hits the one behind 1/100,000th of a second, and then the rhythms at the phone company then use mathematics to calculate where are you exactly.
So location has nothing to do with it.
Well, they can track you right to the location
Right. But
if your phone is on. Now,
They're
if you
talking
shut your
about,
if you shut your phone off, turn it off, or turn your phone service off, then no.
right.
But if your phone is on and you're getting a signal, or you're talking on it, or you're capable of receiving a phone call on it, then the phone company knows. Now, for law enforcement, it's supposed to require a subpoena to get your phone tracked.
Wow.
So, in the case of the kidnapped woman, we did that. The FBI got the subpoena, got the phone company from providing her service, whether it's Verizon or AT&T, I don't recall which company it was, but the company then, goes through their machines, their computers, and track that phone. And they can pick that phone up as long as it's in phone. Now, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's no phone service, there's no tracking. But almost every highway in the country, every interstate for sure, and all the big highways, they have enough cell towers now that you're almost never out of range. You have to be in the mountains of Colorado or somewhere like that, and then you might be out of range. But if you're on a major highway or anywhere near a population area where there's cell phone towers, and they just keep adding and adding to those towers, then you're trackable. And I think that the best illustration of it for general public understanding is 2,000 Mules. That what was portrayed in that movie is exactly what that technology is capable of, and still nobody cared. Now, as Dinesh D'Souza mentioned in producing that movie, he doesn't have the authority, the movie producers don't have the authority to identify the subscriber. But once that the company that was doing the tracking, and they do that for advertising purposes, all kinds of reasons besides tracking individuals, but when they got the information that that phone, they couldn't prove just by that, it said that phone went to this polling place, and that phone went to that drop box, and that phone went to the other place. Well, somebody was with that phone.
Right.
Who was that? So the next logical step is for the local authorities in that jurisdiction to issue a subpoena to the phone company.
Right.
Who owns this phone? Who's the subscriber? And then go to that person and interview and ask, why were you here, there, in the next place? And, and again, the state law, like in a lot of places, requires that those drop boxes be videoed round the clock.
Yeah.
And as he pointed out, where they didn't have the video information is because the authorities didn't do their due diligence to keep the recorders going.
Didn't honor their oath.
That's exactly right. They didn't honor their oath, and that was the problem. But that movie.
I think you turned it off again. There you go.
Okay. Guess I'm the deep state.
No. All right. Thank you, Tom.
But what a tragedy, because that movie's been out for how many months? I think we saw it we saw it in the movie theater the day it came out.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And with a lot of other friends. And in the months following that, no follow-up. I didn't see any law enforcement agency subpoena the records, send investigators to that person and say, okay, we've got this information, we have this where was your phone on this day, this day, this day, this day? You didn't report it stolen, seemingly still worked, and we subpoenaed the phone records. We have all the other calls that you made and received during that time frame. So if somebody stole your phone, what are they doing calling your friends? What are they doing getting calls from their your family? So very easy to track down that information. And if they had done that and put the slightest pressure on any of those mules, in the 2000, he pointed out that there was more than 2,000. That was just the ones that did 20, 30 trips to drop boxes, not 1 or 2 or 3. So at that point, you get them to talk about who hired you, who paid you, subpoena their bank records to show their income for having done that particular activity, and where did you go to pick up the ballots? The safe house that you went to, who ran that? Who were you working for? Many of them were videotaping themselves, putting the ballots in the box. Why would you do? And in that case,
That's how they got paid. Yeah.
and they were not selfies because they're not in the video. The ballots are in the video going to the box.
Right.
So all of that, to me, was absolute negligence on law enforcement in the United States across the board. They were tracking those mules, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Georgia, nothing came out of that. But they don't have the problem going after 950 people in the vicinity of the Capitol on January 6th. And many of them, and I've seen many of them interviewed on Tucker Carlson and other shows, that said they never even went in the building.
Right.
They never went in. They were out on the grounds doing their lawful protest, lawful right of assembly, First Amendment, and still the Bureau came down on them. So it's just flat out evil. And at the time, 4, 5, 6 years ago, I thought, this is just a handful of people at the very top. The Comeys, the McCabe's, the Stracks. But now I see how deep this has gone, and it's horrible.
Right.
Oh, thank you,
Yay,
Tom.
Tom.
Glad
Okay,
you're
thank
here.
you for listening.
Tom.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fuentes. That was an honor. Thank you for speaking tonight. And I can resonate with many what you said. My husband never entered the building, and they did the geo-tracking as evidence against him, and it is a real thing, and that is something we have brought up. Is